out this strategy in the coming weeks. The successful launch of this strategic plan signifies a milestone achievement in the GBV unit's commitment to implementing evidence-based strategy for preventing and addressing gender-based violence. Parenting informational sessions were held in 5 communities around the island. The team provided support. These sessions provided valuable resource to parents, empowering them to nurture safe and supportive environments for their family. The sessions were brought live by Mikey Live, and we received overwhelming number of positive reviews. Activities of the Ministry of Social Development. Madam President, the Ministry of Social Development and Gender Affairs continue to prioritize its efforts towards creating and building a society that is resilient and socially responsive. It operates on the principle of respect, human dignity, and perseverance. Undoubtedly, the transformation of Grenada's social structure and system to improve the capacity continues to drive the agenda of the ministry. From January 2024 to date, the ministry have implemented its efforts to social justice and sustainability while integrating gender-responsive budgeting. Medium-term action plan, the National Sustainable Plan, this National Sustainable Development Goals, Indicators, and other conventions that the Government of Grenada has signed on to and ratified into its practice has been used as our guide in our planning and implementation work at the ministry. Social protection and resilience. Madam President, as the ministry continues to harmonize its social protection effort together with key stakeholders, duty bearers, and social practitioners, several training, community engagement, and public sensitization campaign was undertaken. Madam President, from May 21 to 24, a comprehensive 4-day training on emergency preparedness and response was conducted and facilitated by the United Nations World Food Programme and the United Nations Children Fund, UNICEF. 41 participants received training, and they are representatives from key stakeholder entities such as the Ministry of Social Development and Community Development, Housing and Gender Affairs, NADMA, Agriculture and Fisheries, Ministry of Economic Development, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Finance, and we had a very long list of participants. Harmonization of the social protection. The ministry explored efforts to build and develop a central beneficiary registry system for all social safety nets program. The objective of this centralized system is to modernize the delivery system to have a unified information system to improve the efficiency of services, to reduce inequalities, and to target efforts towards ending poverty. Juvenile justice. Madam President, over the past 6 weeks, significant progress has been made in the establishment and operationalization of the Division of Juvenile Justice. This report outlines the key activities and achievements during the period. Staffing and interviews. Many persons were interviewed for the position of juvenile justice officers and probation officers, integration officers, and other personnel within the ministry that will be needed to roll out the juvenile justice agenda. Interviews were also held for community reintegration officers who will play a critical role in assisting the juveniles in transitioning back into their community post-incarceration and intervention. Collaboration with the Royal Grenada Police Force. A crucial meeting was convened with the representative from the Royal Grenada Police Force to discuss establishment of the pre-charge diversion unit. This unit is intended to offer alternatives to formal judicial proceedings, aiming to reduce youth crime, through early intervention and support. Juvenile Justice Technical Advisory Group. Madam President, in the first meeting of the Juvenile Justice Technical Advisory Group, we successfully came to some common grounds. During this meeting, a draft terms of reference were discussed and approved by the members. National Hannison Young Potential Excellence Mentoring Program. This program, the Cabinet has recently approved the human resource budget for the National Hannison Youth Potential Excellence Program. It is a mentoring program. The HYPE program will be based at the Marian Community Center and is scheduled for launch in July 2024. The pilot phase will run from September 2024 to July 2025, initially supporting 20 mentees. We have also done some preliminary discussion on the aggression replacement training at. Madam President, preliminary discussion has been held with master trainers on island regarding the possibility of offering aggression replacement training as a national diversion option. A proposal is currently being developed for submission to the OECS project for approval. This proposal aims to train facilitators and to run 2 cycles of the ART program. Juvenile Justice Unit. Some of the next step for this Juvenile Justice Unit is to finalize the recruitment of the probation officers, the community reintegration officers, to continue discussion with the Royal Grenada Police Force and the Ministry of National Security to establish the pre-charge diversion unit. Psychosocial support unit to continue to fulfill its objective of providing mental health and psychosocial support for the citizens of Grenada with ongoing efforts to reduce the stigma and discrimination against persons with mental illness. Some of the achievements of the unit from January to June include provision of individual sessions, a total of 286 persons so far. 1 minute. Psychosocial aid and some critical incident stress debriefing in the case of fire, sudden deaths, and other traumatic events. Community development. The Community Development Division has been engaged in a number of physical works all over the island, improving the face of community and providing and upgrading public facilities, drains, walkway, footpath, basketball court, lighting of playing field, public washrooms, to name just a few. Skill training and enrichment exercises have been also undertaken in various communities where young people are exposed to skill development like sewing, tailoring, cosmetology, fashion designing, and so on. We Are Girls, We Are Leaders is a training organized for developing leadership among young girls. This has been organized for McDonald College. I say nothing about housing. Okay, so Madam President, on this note I will end, although I have not touched housing and some other areas. My ministry is a very vast and it's a diverse one, and it takes a lot to really report, especially after a month or two. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Thomas, and we do appreciate the vastness along with the active engagement of your ministry. So we appreciate your foregoing a full report. If you submit it to the clerk, we will certainly include this in the record for today. Congratulations on all the work you're doing there. Thank you very much for your report. And I offer the floor to Senator Quince Britton. As you stand, I must also thank you for representing us in the parliamentary meetings in Trinidad and Tobago. Are you going to report on this as well? Say a word, just a word.
Thank you very much. And good morning, Madam President, staff of the Parliament, my colleagues on the other side, my colleagues on
point of order or inquiry here. I'm sorry to interrupt you, sir.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Yes, I know you was more watching over there, but always remember when the minister's statements made, there is us on this side who will have something to say most times. Thank you. I'm sorry, Brother Queens, you would come in a while. It's, as a cultural man, sometimes they have to go testing 1, 2, 3. So at least he set up and he'll come in a while. Thank you, Madam President. The 2 points I wanted to make is one, of course, that you mentioned. Lastly, as a suggestion, if the brief is long, we could always, have the brief sent out as an addendum for us to read. And very good, and it's good to get a ministerial statement, not just for us, but for the public, so we know what is happening, because a lot of times things is happening and persons just don't know, and they make all statements, even ourselves, and they say, I just want to comment on one thing, because I know this was a matter that keep coming up as one of the strategic approaches, particularly when we keep looking at the agriculture budget process, the whole issue of mentoring the youth and the young ones. And I'm happy to see that that program is started, and not to show what is the focus, what is the target, what is the goal in terms of the specific areas, or even just be mentoring. So will there be a focus? Yes, there are maybe 20 persons, but is there a goal? What is the strategy? Is it just persons who want to be mentored? Those type of things. It will be helpful to understand the policy direction, because there are persons outside there who would be, one, interested in providing mentorship, both locally and in the diaspora through online forums, etc., and also who want to be mentored, who, so you may say, well, I want mentorship in goat farming, I want mentorship in business skills, I want mentorship in something, and then there may be other persons locally in the diaspora who are saying, okay, we are willing to maybe have a session maybe once a month with young persons, and not necessarily young persons, but persons who need, the expertise and knowledge about it. So I think I am very happy to hear that. I always like to hear ministers' updates, and this one in particular has very far-reaching potential if done properly. So I don't think she mentioned it just like in passing, but this is more than 20 persons you're targeting, and I think we should have a better plan surrounding that. I want to see we head in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sinclair. I take it your comments are directed to Senator Thomas. Doesn't necessarily require a response, but you're invited to give one if you wish. Senator Thomas.
The HIDE program is targeting youths who are at risk, to try to keep them on the safe and narrow initially, and then while they're in training, while they're in the program, we'll try to identify their interests, their strengths, the aptitudes, and we will lead them in that way to develop whatever skills necessary so that they could take charge of their lives over a period of time.
Thank you, Senator Thomas, and the compliment that Senator Sinclair has given to you might also indicate his willingness to become a mentor. So I pray that all those bilateral conversations will be held afterwards. And we return to Senator Queens Britton. Senator Britton, thank you for your patience. Back on the floor, please, sir.
Good morning again, Madam President, and to the members, the staff, and members on the other side, my colleagues on this side as well. Thank you again for the opportunity. And in saying thanks, I also like to thank the Parliament of Grenada for giving me the opportunity to represent Grenada in a recently held seminar, a regional seminar for parliamentarians, organized by the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago and the Interparliamentary Union. The seminar was based on climate change. It was a continuation of seminars they had previously, one in Suriname back in 2018 and another in Trinidad 2019, and because of COVID and so on, so it was basically a follow-up as it relates to climate change and sustainable development goals and so on, as small island countries or small island developing states, and with the effects of climate change and how we're going to treat with climate change, including the role of artificial intelligence in climate change, migration, and the mitigating factors of climate change. The workshop or the seminar was over a 3-day period. I really enjoyed it. You learned a lot, and coming out of that seminar, we all agreed collectively it's time for us to change our approach, as climate change is something very serious, and we have to do our part to mitigate against to mitigate against those factors that is presented or climate change presents, because we do see we're getting more warm weather or warmer weathers. We're seeing some intense storms and so on. In fact, the meteorological office together in NADMA has already give a prediction that we will have an overactive season this year. I pray God that it doesn't come and affect us in no negative way, that we are safe from all those disasters and so on. Nevertheless, we still have to prepare, and that's what I would encourage, that we prepare, we do whatever that we can, and strengthen our legislation and so on to do so. So thanks again for the opportunity, Madam President. And just from our ministry, when I say our ministry, my minister is right here, our Ministry of Tourism, Creative Economy and Culture. So I'm just going to, last time we met, I reported on the Festival of the Arts, which were ongoing. We just completed a round of solo singing. That went well. We just completed that. We recently completed the launch of Spice Mass, because the last time I was here, I was inviting persons to come to the launch. We completed the launch of Spice Mass both in Grenada and in the diaspora. New York, I went to that, and it was the overall the acceptance and so on from the people in the diaspora, the excitement, the quality of music that some of the artists and performances that they give, and just to encourage persons to come. Already we've seen an increase of about 70% in bookings for persons have interest of coming to Spice Mass, and on that note, we really would like to encourage a safe and peaceful Spice Mass season. We have the gun amnesty that we overly emphasize, that persons to do the necessary, the right thing and turn in any illegal firearms that is out there. Any illegal firearms that is out there. You have a golden opportunity now to let us take advantage of that, because one life lost is always one too many. The office, sticking with culture, tomorrow, God's will, we have Take It to the Street. It's a dancing competition, will be held at the Tantin Netball Court, where you have a group of persons who already registered as individuals or groups come together and participate in that competition, take it to the streets, where you have different forms of dancing and so on. It will be judged. It's something annually that's put on by the Division of Culture within the ministry, and tomorrow we will be doing that starting from 6 p.m. 6 p.m. Yeah. So I invite everyone to come and be a part of. The Office of Creative Affairs continue their business development workshop so that person can take advantage of the business, the culture and creative industry business development fund. So we've seen persons applying for the fund, and after that you don't see anything else, any movement. So the Office of Creative Affairs decided, that they are going to reach out to those persons to help them to complete the process. So they are assisting them with their business plans and financial proposals, etc., etc. One of the workshops took place on the 14th of May, and then you have another one coming up on the 10th of June. That's on Monday, God's will. So we are doing what we can within all departments, so just to let the public know of some of the things that are happening. And as I said, I still want to encourage that we have a safe and peaceful season. So thank you very much for the opportunity. As you know, as short as I am, I'll always remain short. All right? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Britton. I can comment on your short statement and no more. Senator Andre Lewis, please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm just making a request to the other side, and it would be useful if that can also be done today, if there is merit in what I'm saying. And I do believe that on the question of the gun amnesty, it is important to keep making the point as to what will be involved, meaning that once you come in within the period, there will be no penalties. In other words, because government officials, that's the point I'm making again, colleagues, through you, Madam President, you all need to speak with one voice. Say what you all are saying. You can't have government officials, especially in this House, making comments that says differently, because on the streets outside there, people are asking these questions. So it is important that we need to keep repeating, not only from our side here, because we are not the government, need to keep repeating. Our colleague, Senator Britton, and thanks for what you continue to do as a youth man. Yes, if I may use that term. But it is important to repeat that when you turn in your firearm, that you do not need to worry about the police tracing it, and if there's any issue, they're calling you in, etc. It's important to keep hammering those issues. I will develop on some of the matters as we go later on, because there's an initiative from the Greater Bar Association that the labor movement is part of, and others, yes, calling for peace. But on that matter, Senator Britton, through you, Madam President, if what I'm saying is correct, and that's the position of the authority, that the amnesty is what it is, meaning that you bring in your illegal firearm, and that's the beginning and end. Right? If this is the position, as I do believe this is what I've heard, I'm asking if you can clarify this in this House so the listening population can hear it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Lewis. I believe I'm correct when I say that this legislation was passed here as well, and therefore we can all be advocates, government officials, of course, but I think all parliamentarians are involved in the governance of this country. And this was a piece of legislation that came through here. So, and you said it well yourself, the formulation that you were looking for from the other side, I hear you utter it. So I think you could also, and all of us are called upon to be advocates for this, notwithstanding, of course, your central point, which is there should be one message and the government should be key advocates of that. You have the floor again, sir.
Permit me, please, just a clarity. We all have to be advocates. What I'm addressing is that when we, probably it's unfortunate to say we, but I'll say we in the house, say something which is different. When we say that if when you bring in the firearm, that investigations will be carried out, and if there is any need to call you in, it will be done. I'm saying, if that is not the case, we must not say this. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying we must speak with one voice.
Thank you, Senator. I believe you have been heard. Any other minister wishing to take the floor? I see a request from the Senator Jonathan Lacrette, one of our favorite sons. You have the floor, sir.
I don't know about favorite, Madam President, but anyway, I will oblige to your kind statement. Thank you very much, senatorial colleagues, clerk and deputy clerk, good morning, and the viewing public this morning, Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. The Division of Youth, in November 2024, the Division of Youth will officially start the 4th cohort of the Empower program. And I believe as of Monday, 10th June 2024, that's next week Monday, registration will start in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. I want to appeal to all parliamentarians, the young men that you know in your constituency, parish, community, village, that you feel will be able to benefit tremendously from this program. Please encourage them to go to the center where the registration is going to be taking place so that they can register and participate in the program. We have done some remodeling of the program, Madam President. I didn't mention that, I believe, in the last Senate sitting. And one of the remodeling aspects of the program is that the skills training, the soft skills component of the program was only for 3 months, but we felt it best to run the soft skills throughout the entire duration of the program so that it benefits the participants in a holistic and sustainable way upon exiting the program. Additionally, Madam President, we do plan to ensure that the care package that they receive post-graduation or upon graduation is a care package that is much more substantial, simply because times have changed, things have become more expensive, and as a result of that, we want to be able to cater to the needs of these young men properly upon leaving the program. So we are excited about the official start of the program in November and the registration that is commencing on Monday, 10th June in Carriacou, and we will go to every parish thereafter. The schedule for registration is on our Facebook page as well as our Instagram page, and we are also going to ask various media houses to carry the schedule so that persons can be made aware as to when and where the registration is going to take place. The Grenada Invitational. On Monday, April 22nd, the ministry that I have been given the responsibility to supervise, the Ministry of Youth and Sports, tabled a submission before the Cabinet of Grenada requesting a financial support for the Grenada Invitational. The Cabinet, in its prudence and kind wisdom, approved the submission for the financial request that was being made by the Grenada Invitational body, and we, as a collective body, we wanted to ensure that we are participators in the development of our youth sports here in Grenada, as well as it was going to be lovely to see our Olympians back home, yes, for a short period of time, and for us to be able to give them a send-off as they prepare for the Paris Olympics 2024. Regrettably, the invitation event was cancelled, Madam President, and all efforts made thereafter to reach Mr. Mitchell to ascertain from him as to why the cancellation of the event, because as far as I know from my ministry and as far as government knows, we were all on board in supporting the event financially. All efforts have been futile until yesterday, when I was able to get in contact with Mr. Mitchell, myself and the PS and the Director of Sports at the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and he has been under the weather, as he has reported, for a number of days. Actually, to me, Madam President, he sounded really terrible. But nevertheless, he said that he wanted to take some time to recover, and once he does, he is going to pay the ministry a visit, sit down with the team and explain to us why the cancellation. So as it stands, Madam President, I cannot report to the nation as to why the cancellation until I am briefed by the director of the event. Yes? Additionally, Madam President, on Friday the 7th of June, that is this Friday, the Government of Grenada, through the Ministry of Youth and Sports, will mount and launch a further education and training objective. And that object, a further education and training Google survey. And that survey, the objective of the survey is to better understand the needs and aspirations of our youth. So we're going to ask all media houses to ensure that they carry on their live events that survey. And that survey will also be posted on our social media page as well, and some of government's social media pages as well, so that young persons within the ages of 18 to 30 can participate in the survey, so that we can have a better needs assessment of what these young people desire to have. As a result, our programmatic agenda will be more sustainable in terms of its structure and in terms of its offering, so young persons can benefit from it moving forward. The Division of Sports, we continue, Madam President, with the upgrades of our major playing fields, because we understand the importance of recreation, we understand the importance of sports, so we continue the upgrade of our major playing fields, be it lighting, rehabilitation, reconstruction, etc. I did mention to my honorable colleagues that secondary playing fields in their constituencies, parishes, etc., some of them will be taken into consideration coming up in our supplementary budget and thereafter in the new budget cycle for November, simply because when major playing fields are occupied with major sporting activities, you want to ensure that a preschool that wants to have a sport can use a secondary playing field that's up to a particular standard, etc. So we are working towards that, providing the listing of these fields so that we can have them properly outfitted to a particular standard for use. I also want to mention that in July of 2024, or that's this July, our Prime Minister will assume chairmanship of the CARICOM community, and as a result of that, CARICOM heads of government will convene on Grenadian soil, and as such, we are going to have the CARICOM 10K race taking place in Grenada during the period that CARICOM heads of government will convene on our soil. So Ministry of Youth and Sports, Grenada Athletic Association, etc., GOC, we are working towards ensuring that the race comes off successfully, and that all CARICOM heads of government will be proud to see their respective athletes represent their territories in that race. The Windward Island School Games will commence on the 20th of July to the 6th of August in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Grenada will be sending a very huge contingent to that of over 60 athletes and 8 or 9 coaches or so to that Windward Island Games, and we're definitely going to defend, Madam President. We intend to come back home with a number of trophies and medals as our athletes go to represent our state of Grenada, Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Primary school cricket competition is going to commence soon. We currently have the primary school netball competition that is ongoing at the moment. The football for secondary school should commence this October, as well as basketball should commence this term as well, this coming term, the first term of the school year. I want to make a note, Madam President, as a former, well, as an educator, still educating. Years ago, the academic school year was very lengthy. You're in school and you're wondering when are we going to have recess, because the term used to be so long. Nowadays, it's not the same. The days seem shorter. The term seems shorter. Schools have added more subjects to their curriculum, be it extracurricular activities or mainstream academic subjects, etc. And a lot is going on in the education system, re-education at the primary and secondary level. With that, it takes a lot to incorporate sports into the mainstream curriculum, and to have students who are academically inclined as well as sporting inclined to be here, there, and everywhere as such. Because some educators, even though you have a student that is excellent at sports, you want him or her to pass your subject at the same time when CXC comes. So you have that kind of dichotomy existing, especially at the secondary school level. But nevertheless, one of the things that we are embarking on now, together with stakeholders at the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and I'm really driving this with my National Sports Coordinator, because I understand it from a personal place being there. We must be able to manage all these sporting activities, especially within the first term. Yes, so you have football taking place in the first term. You have netball taking place in the first term. You have basketball starting in November and ending in February. And then the list goes on. Now you want to introduce cricket. Well, cricket was always there, kind of dissipated a bit somewhat, but we want to bring back the cricket competitions at the secondary level. So with all that taking place simultaneously at the same time, somewhat, sometimes based on weather conditions, some sporting activities overlap into the other month or into the scheduled space of the next sporting activity, and sometimes it creates a bit of a problem. So what we're trying to do is to see how best we can spread these sporting activities throughout the entire academic school year without interfering with the academic schedules of secondary institutions. With primary, it's a little bit more different, so we're grateful about that. But we will have a roundtable discussion with the Ministry of Education, principals associations, etc., to see how best we can manage those sporting activities so that principals, teachers, students, parents, the communities who come out to patronize these secondary schools that are within the community space can have the best of both worlds at the end of the day, because this is not for us, Madam President, it's for the children, so that they can be holistic upon their exit from secondary school. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for another very a report of great activity in your domain, Minister. I wanted to find out a little bit more about the Empower program, how long it is, and so on. We will get some further details later on, but congratulations on all that you are doing. I think this may have brought us to the end of ministerial statements. There is a light on and it belongs to Senator Cox. You have the floor, Senator.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I want to take this opportunity to commend the government for continuing the Empower program, which is a very important program for young men, given the challenges that they have to face and the construct of how our society operates in terms of opportunities that are available for men, as young men, as against young women. So I think it's very important for us to recognize that and continue to invest in them. However, Madam President, I just wanted to maybe ask a question, two questions on the invitation. I think it's appropriate because the Greater Invitation is a very important sporting event for our country, both from a sporting development standpoint, both from a financial standpoint, economic standpoint. Being former Minister for Sports, I had an opportunity to oversee the Invitational on two occasions, 2018 and 2019. So I do have some knowledge as to how it operates. But I want to ask, Madam President, because I just find it strange that the minister just doesn't have information as to the reasons why cancellation was tendered. Because from my understanding, I want to ask whether or not that the government or ministry had a representation as part of the planning committee on the invitational, because that is standard. An event of that nature would certainly have somebody representing government on the planning of the Ministry of Sports. So my view is if there was such a person, reports should have been tendered to the ministry, to the minister, to the PS, as to what is taking place, how plans are going, and if there are any issues leading up to the cancellation, I mean, those would have been brought to the fore. So I wanted to find out if there was a representation, and if so, was reports being tendered? I don't want to go into a debate on this, but I just wanted to raise that because I think that for something so significant, for it to be cancelled without information, I think there just needs to be some more clarity on that. So I just wanted to tell that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cox, and Senator Minister of Sports. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Senator Cox, as well. Madam President, we do have a representative that is on the committee, and the representative in his prudence, that's our National Coordinator for Sports, did and consistently reported to the Permanent Secretary and I as it relates to updates to the Grenada Invitational. However, Madam President, I cannot speak to what happened in the late rounds in the last 2 weeks or a week or so leading up to, I think it's supposed to start today. Today's supposed to be the invitational leading up to the 6th of June. And as a result of that, I am waiting any information that Mr. Mitchell has that he can provide me and provide the coordinator for sports as well, as it relates to why the cancellation. Yes, I know that Mr. Mitchell went into a meeting last week, Monday, with his board of directors, the invitational event, and thereafter I have not been able to have a meeting with Mr. Mitchell until yesterday via phone call when he said that he is gravely ill, and as a result he would like the time to recover. And as I said, until such time I cannot say to the nation why the event was cancelled until I sit with the director and he says to me and gives myself and the team at the Ministry of Youth and Sports the courtesy of saying why it was cancelled, knowing that the government committed to supporting 150% financially the event.
Thank you for your response. And you do know the weight of the nation facing Mr. Mitchell, because people were looking forward to it. So I'm sure Mr. Mitchell will take that on board when he sees the ministry next week, and we wish him recovery. Any other ministerial statements? I think this has exhausted it for this morning. Thank you for the valuable information, distinguished members of the National Executive. And please find ways, all of you, and particularly around the Empower program and one or two others I wanted to mention, the importance of engendering all those projects and programs and activities to make sure that gender equality, gender sensitivity, gender transformational behavior is included in everything, every program that is undertaken, from sports to food, school feeding, and so on. I did hear that we are using dry goods, the Minister of Education said, and I smiled because I asked myself, I wonder if we gone back to corned beef. But I understand you to also say that there's quite a bit of involvement of local farmers for local produce to be the mainstay, 80–85% of what the young students are able to consume. So keep that up, and thank you again. I see a light on, Senator Lacrette.
Yes, Madam
Please,
President. Just for further clarity, I just wanted to posit that the Grenada Invitational event is a private event.
You have to speak a little louder.
I just wanted to posit that the Grenada Invitational event is a private event. And as a stakeholder or sponsor of the event, we will be out of turn and out of place to come out and speak, Madam President, about something that we don't have knowledge of, really cancellation. So as a result of that, I think that the Board of Directors, as well as the local organizing committee attached to the event, will have to say to the nation sooner rather than later why the event was cancelled. And as a result, the Ministry and Government of Grenada awaits such conference as well.
I thank you, and I trust I did not speak out, did encourage you to speak out of turn. Thank you. Any other reflections before we close off this segment? Take off all our gloves, and Senator Sinclair, his gloves are off, and here he comes. You have
Well,
the mic, sir.
Madam President, you open a window that I try to stay far away, but you open the window and Senator Lacrette push it open wider, and you see, the emphasis of it as a private event worries me, Madam President, because a lot of events, and not just sporting, different events, takes place in this country are private. And of course, government would partner in various ways. And so I'm kind of getting curious as to the terms of engagement of government with these private operators, and government basically assessing its risk in terms of getting involved, because at the end of the day, government's reputation becomes at stake. And once government is involved in something, people tend to support, because government is generally a credible factor. And so I think that government need to start evaluating the sort of risk and context of some of these engagements, so we don't end up having these sort of unfortunate circumstances. Of course, there are persons who might have booked tickets and all these different things, would have imported different stocks and so on to cater for this event. I mean, I know the gentleman very well involved, but that is not my business. Government, I'm worried about getting involved in those things and committing resources, taxpayers' money, other tax money. Maybe we have a lot of money, so we don't have a problem. And I mean, I failed to even ask the senator the question, which I know he may not want to disclose. What is this full support that your government intended to give that you're not giving again? And the fact that the event is closed down, what do you intend to do with this committal? Do you do it and assign it to some other important thing for the nation's benefit? Or would you just put it back into the coffers and say, well, it's okay? So I think these are some views that is coming out of that window, Madam President. No, this is the question.
Do you have an intention to go after those funds, Senator Sinclair?
No. Pretty larceny. We police need resources. You see, and this is the problem, you know. Supporting things that ain't even happening, when we really have things that need happening. Our own people, our resources, our pretty larceny, could have done with maybe half of that, quarter of that, to get some officers back, get some vehicles going. Government, be careful. I would like to know how much money was assigned, seriously, Madam President.
I thank you, and if there is a response from the other side, Senator Lacrette, you wish to take the floor.
Senator Cox, we can have a sidebar, there's nothing difficult about that. Madam President, government committed $350,000 EC.
Which is now freed up for consideration of others. Thank you very much. This brings our discussions and reflections to a close. Great, thank you very much. We move to the next agenda item.
Item 8, presentation of papers and reports from select committees. Item 9, petitions. Item 10, government notices. Item 11, unofficial notices. Item 12, questions.
No question.
Okay. Item 13, personal explanations. Item 14, motions. Item 15, bills.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Clerk. I offer the floor to the Minister of Education, Senator Andrew.
Yes. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to introduce for first reading a bill for an act shortly entitled Education Amendment Bill 2024.
The bill which seeks to amend the Education Act, Chapter 86, to increase the compulsory school age for children from 16 years to 17 years, shortly entitled Education Amendment Bill 2024.
Minister Andrew.
Madam President, I beg to move that the relevant standing orders of the Senate be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through audit stages at this sitting.
Honorable members, the question is that the relevant standing orders of the Senate be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting. All those who are in favor, aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. I think the ayes have it. Minister.
Madam President, I beg to move the second reading of the bill.
Honorable members, the question proposes that the bill be read a second time.
Madam President, the Education Amendment Bill 2024 is a bill that seeks to amend the Education Act, Chapter 86 of the Principal Act, to increase the compulsory school age from 16 inclusive to 17 years inclusive. Now, what this really means, it's to have it adjusted from 16 years inclusive to 18 years. In fact, this is the legal language to say 18 years. So, in principle, we are moving the upper limit of the compulsory school age to 18. That's what this means. But of course, it has to be put in legal jargon and consistent with the writing of the Education Act. Because the Education Act says the compulsory school age is from 5 to 16. And we keep the inclusives. If you say to 18, it will imply beyond 18, which takes you into your 19th birthday, which is not a legal position to take. So when we say 17 inclusive, I want everybody around listening to understand that this actually means all of 17 up to the last day before you attain your 18th birthday. So it's, in layman terms, it's to 18 we're talking about here. This bill, Madam President, contains two clauses. Clause 1 seeks to provide for the short title for the act for which this is the bill, and Clause 2, Part 2, seeks to provide for the act to come into force on the first day of September 2024. Clause 2 seeks to amend the definition of the term compulsory school age under Section 2.1 of the Principal Act to increase the compulsory school age from 16 to 17 inclusive, which, as I explained, is up to 18. Madam President, I want to give some background as to why this amendment is an important one. With the current Education Act, a student can legally exit the education system at age 16. In fact, having been in education all my life, we've had truancy officers, we've had school attendance officers, and sometimes you try to keep students in school, but from the time a child gets to the age of 16, they could walk out and not even a parent could tell them, and that's been the application, even though the law has said 16 inclusive. From the time a child got to 16, we no longer had legal jurisdiction to keep them in school. And so you find 16-year-olds who can say, I no longer want to remain in school, and we have no legal course of redress to deal with them. Further, we find that there are several students who leave school duly after completing secondary school at age 16, and they can easily say, well, I'm through with education, I'm through with learning, I'm going to find a work, I'm going to find a job. But the reality is that these young persons are inadequately prepared for the world of work. Our business senator on the other side will tell us that the experiences come from a lot of employers, that there's a lack of work readiness on the part of our young persons coming out of the school system. The education sector has an obligation and a responsibility to bridge that gap. And so this results in frustration for many of the young, for the employers. Let me put it that way first. And so many of the employers apply to the Ministry of Labor for work permits for foreigners to come, to do jobs that ordinarily Grenadian young people could have been doing if they had the proper skill sets. While we have a system that tells people at 16 you could say I'm no longer interested. And we can walk around several communities and you'll find many young persons between 16 and 18 per se, 16, 19, who have nothing doing. They're waiting for some program somewhere, they're waiting for what you have, they'll ask you, but they're not properly skilled. And so we have the work permit issue, and then we have several of those young people feeling frustrated and resorting to idleness, resulting in lifestyles of drugs, crime, and violence. And there's a gap that needs to be fixed. We know, Madam President, that several of these young persons could barely work legally. Why do I say that? They could barely work legally because in several sectors they can't open a bank account at 16. They can't have a driver's license to facilitate meaningful engagement in the world of work. But we churn them out. And without a legal structure to ensure that we give them the opportunity to be further skilled and educated, we are failing them. And we continue to do that. We know that there will be an opportunity for further amendment to the Labor Code, because there is an ILO provision, and I'm sure Senator Andre will probably speak to that, that allows for some kind of engagement from as early as 16. But when properly interpreted, we don't think that's in conflict, because once they continue to be in school, both can work concurrently. But there is an opportunity for further amendments there. Madam President, this situation of having children leave school at 16 has resulted in forced successive governments to grapple with numerous youth programs attempting to address this situation and to correct the situation. It's out of this situation and this systemic fracture that several of the programs that we've grappled with and we are currently grappling with have been born. It's a response to fix those things. Yeah? We have hundreds of young people outside there with no skill, and so we have to recreate a mechanism, whether we call it Imani or we call it GET or we call it some other kind of program. And most of those things are born out of that defect. And so, Madam President, if we clear the water from the flooded kitchen and we don't address the broken pipe that leaks the water in, the result is obvious. There will be continued flooding. And so in many ways, in some measure, this is a reflection of what our system is faced with. And this bill, this amendment, seeks to correct that, to put a system in place to begin correcting that. We want our youth to have the opportunity to have 2 additional years of education. We want to mandate that. So we want to make sure they cannot walk out at 16 and say, I am no longer interested. But they have to remain in an education setting, 17 inclusive, up to the point of attaining 18, at which point they become officially an adult. And so that could mean continuing in secondary school, and let me make it for the avoidance of doubt. The current Education Act allows a student to be in school all the way up to 21, or 20 inclusive, 21, in effect, if they're interested. So we are not saying you have to leave. We are not saying you must leave. But we are saying you must remain in an education, schooling, training setting up till the age of 18. You can't minimum. And that's what this is addressing. And this could mean that for the child who completes secondary school at 16, they can go on to TAMCC, they can go on to NULO, they can go on to university, they can get involved with one of the recognized and certified service providers in technical areas, as you learn about. So it's providing all of these options, but you cannot say before you attain your 18th birthday, you're no longer interested in getting skill. And so this gives us the opportunity to have this 2-year window to get more skilling and education given to our young people. This we think is a step in the right direction because the research overwhelmingly show that the more skilled and educated a person is, the better the chances of success, the better the chances of a higher economic standard of living, the better the prospects for a brighter future, and greater the chances of success, right? And the list can go on and on. So this is what we are trying to set in motion for our youth with this amendment. Madam President, this bill doesn't happen in a vacuum. See, I listened to some of the comments coming out from the other place. And they talk about you don't just ad hocly do stuff and you have to consult and you have to... I have no problem with consultation. But this is in no way any ad hoc decision. This is part of Grenada's national TVET policy and strategy for skills implementation across the country. This very document, as was correctly alluded to in the other place, was the product of a long period of consultation and work, including international agencies that assisted local skills providers in Grenada, NTA, GNAB, and several of the other players. NULO, TAMCC, all of these players were involved in the crafting of that document, which we eventually had passed at the cabinet level. Both the policy and the strategy in 2023. And this that we are doing, this amendment, is in fact in keeping with that. So it's not happening in isolation. It's happening as part of a national strategy that we have approved. It's not ad hoc at all. There are several other steps that have been implemented in that same strategy, and I'll just recall a few. So one, since that policy's approval, we have continued to expand the TVET offering to primary schools. So it's been there, but a limited number of schools traditionally were exposed. Since the implementation of the strategy, we have expanded the offerings to make sure almost all of our primary schools are now exposed to TVET education, based on regrouping and ensuring that centers are within proximity to all of our primary schools. And then we have an additional 10 schools down for retrofitting to include more opportunities for extended periods of exposure at the primary level. That's currently with the Ministry of Infrastructure. The designs are there and it's being reviewed for, we wish it happened sooner, but it's currently there, right? Then we can talk about the trainings that have happened for TVET teachers. As recently as last month, there was a UNESCO training for teachers across primary and secondary schools in the field of TVET education. So this is ongoing. Further, the very decisions to remove the tuition for TAMCC and NULO students was in fact part of that strategy to incentivize persons and to make it easier to increase the access to continued education. So nobody could say, well, I can't continue because I can't find the 810. So government has put that in place. So we've already set a lot of these things in motion to accommodate this 18, this mandatory, the move to making education mandatory till the age of 18. So it's not ad hoc. Further, Madam President, I can say to you that our ministry has gone forward, and in anticipation of having everybody continue education after secondary school, and I say after secondary school because the Education Act, a child starts schooling at 5. The earliest a child could start school is 4 years plus at the primary level by the Education Act. So the child can be 4, but they must be turning 5 in that same first semester ending December. So the earliest a child can enter is 4, turning 5. Which means 7 years later, the duration for primary education, they'll be 11 plus at youngest. They can be older, they can be 12, heading for 13, depending on when they were born. You add 5 years to that, which is the duration of a secondary school journey, they'll be 16 plus. So the natural progression takes you at 16 plus at your earliest to leave secondary school. So understand the strategic placement of this amendment, when it provides for an additional 2 years to ensure that between 16 plus and 18 plus, we have the opportunity to, well, yes, between 16 plus and 17 plus, yes, we have the opportunity. No, I meant 18 plus, because some people will actually leave at 18 plus. Yeah, I wasn't referring to the law itself, I'm referring to the actual reality that persons leave at 16 and in 2 years after they'll be 18 plus, 16 plus, 18 plus, yeah. So that period within 16 plus, 18 plus will give us the opportunity to expose them to more skills. And so in preparation for that, apart from the fact that TAMCC and NULO are continuing to register students, and I can tell you NULO has doubled its intake, right, since the free tuition policy. Additionally, we have started engaging a number of the service providers in technical education in preparation for this. So we are engaging, we have some Grace Typing School, we have SIDAT, we have the Spicile School of Music that we are engaging, Adult and Teen Challenge, we are working with Labukan Creative Center. So all of these are agencies that are NTA certified, Madam President, that we have begun engaging and having discussions with in preparation and in anticipation that we are going to have to find spaces to continue students who may not necessarily want to go to MCC or NULO, but who might have other interests that we might want to put them into. We understand, Madam President, that there are several nuances that we will have to work with, fix, amend, make adjustments to as we go along. But we are confident from where we sit, from where we stand, that this is a correct step, a bold step in the right direction in addressing the work-related gaps coming out of the education system and the needs of the world of work. And so, Madam President, I commend this bill to this Honorable House wholeheartedly and without reservation for their support, their debate, and I invite all of those from you. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister of Education. Senator Andrew Lewis. speak.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and thank you to the Minister of Education for presenting the bill, which must be of noble intention. And my contribution is not based on whether this, I can't say it is good or bad, because I am seeking information in terms of data, what is driving this. So for instance, I've heard the sort of academic explanations as to the intent, aspirations, in terms of aspirational. But I'm wondering if it is not a case of putting the cart before the horse. And I spent some time last night speaking to one or two regional colleagues. All right. At first, when I saw the bill, I just took it as something as minor, just moving 16 to 17, which is 17 plus. But in my discussion, and including someone that has been involved in the education system, not just in Grenada and the region, a number of questions were asked of me, which I could not have answered because certainly the bill did not provide those information. It also begs into question whether or not we have not reached that stage where whenever we are coming to Parliament, this House, certainly in the Senate, to discuss matters like these, some background information can be given. So for instance, in this case, I heard the Minister speak about number of people on the blocks. What has the research shown? How many people between the age of 16 to 18 on the blocks? Yes. Those questions were asked, and whether or not emphasis, as a matter of fact, the advice was that emphasis should be given to making the need to stay in school, because I know that there seem to be making a distinction sometimes between education and school, but the bill speaks about school age. The bill didn't speak about education up to, so I'm just dealing with what the bill says, school, and a traditional form. But I know what we should do is to seek to put systems in place that will make learning or staying in school attractive and not necessarily compulsory. You get in the compulsion through the attractiveness by the creation of jobs, opportunities, that one know when you engage in certain aspects of knowledge gaining, the opportunities are there for you to create a better standard of living. And that will encourage you to want to be engaged, because we can move up the social ladder, and our best way out of poverty is through education. And because we have not done the research, or we are not aware of the research, moving it from 16 to 17, what is it guaranteed to achieve? So I did a quick look through the region, and I called some of my colleagues last night. So I did not do it extensively, but I just look at the OECS region. So for instance, the age in St. Vincent is 5 to 16, similar to ours here. Dominica is 5 to 15 plus. When I look at Barbados, and I find it instructive, because I think we all understand and appreciate that Barbados has been a leading country in terms of literacy rates and academic and such achievement. And we see here, for instance, that Barbados has a compulsory school leaving age of 16 and has a literacy rate of 99.7%. Trinidad and Tobago is also mandatory, compulsory age of 16, and also boasts a literacy rate of 99%. Antigua and Barbuda has a literacy rate of 99%. I did not get from the research I did last night, I did not get this school leaving age, but I would have a guess that it is 16 based on information that is around. There are a number of challenges that can go with this. As I said, it is not a case of whether it is good or bad. It is a matter of wanting the information. The aspect of consultation. And earlier, the minister, life is really ironic sometimes. The minister said that CXC said that there is some consultation. He said, they say. Yes? Which is clearly an indication that our local ministry, most likely, although we had representation there, our ministers were not directly involved. I can tell you that up to last night, my information from the Grenada Union of Teachers is that the Grenada Union of Teachers as a body have not been consulted. These are the people I expected to be implemented and leaving with those implications, because people are expected to stay in school longer. The implication for resources, the implication for classroom sizes or more spaces, physical spaces, accommodation. The engagement with teachers are expected now to be longer. And I'm addressing teachers because they are moving from 16. You're dealing with students who would be advanced in age, and there will be certain behavioral patterns that may change. Right? So there needs to be those forms of consultation. The increased costs, and this is from an insight from the OECD analysis. Increased costs extending compulsory education will necessitate additional funding for educational infrastructure, teachers' salaries, and learning materials. Ensuring that the education budget can accommodate these increased costs without compromising quality is essential. So it is not just a case, and I'm not saying that this is what the government is saying, but it is not just a case of having people stay in school longer, having exposure to additional training, because one can find ways, as Barbados have done and Trinidad has done, to have technical or skilled training as part of your curriculum. One can find ways and means of doing that. As a matter of fact, one would recall the days of the wing, I'm just using that terminology, the wing, etc. I know we are now in a more modern age in terms of technology, but the technology allows for these things to be incorporated, to even be done from within the spaces that we have at the moment in terms of computers. Right? So the means of delivering, does not require that physical engagement. Yes? The question of transportation, because one can possibly foresee that with the training that the minister and others may be speaking of, sometimes it may require an extended period. I'm talking about beyond the normal day. We already have a challenge with transport, and I'm therefore using this opportunity to plug in the need for the state to urgently address the issue of transportation, even if it means for school. And do not wait for too long to address that. The resource allocation, infrastructure improvement, particularly in rural areas, to ensure equitable access to quality education for all students. These are all factors that has to be taken into account. Coming out of the OECD analysis, it also says that maintaining student engagement for an additional year may be challenging, especially for those who may already be disengaged or who are looking to be disengaged. Because this is expected to take effect from September of this year, September of 2024. So someone who is already at age 15 or who will turn 16 in December, one will expect that as of September, that person, and it may be quite a number of them, because I think per year we look in terms of the secondary school of turning out, was it about 2,000 students, thereabouts? How many? About 2,000, give or take? Right, give or take. Right, so what is the research? Have we looked into what is the age group that can be impacted in the immediate scenario? And what do we do to engage them? Could we lead to a state of rebelliousness? Right? A number of us have gone through those ages and stages. A number of us could have taken that different turn in the road. A number of us are aware of some of our colleagues who couldn't wait to leave school, quote unquote school. What will be the implication for this sudden, what is it we are seeking to achieve? I've heard all of the aspirational issues. But what is it that requires from, we are in June, and we are hearing, you're asking us to give support to an immediate amendment. An immediate amendment that takes effect from September 2024, and we are in June 2024. As I've indicated in my start, it is not a question of whether it is good or bad, but these things require informed decision making. And if we are not yet ready, as I've seemed to have heard from the other side, in the other place, your side in the other place, that we are laying the foundation and we can do the consultations and engagement, etc. Why is it necessary to apparently rush into this? No. I'm prepared to back off. If information is provided that we have done the research, this is what it has shown. What is the implication possibly for an increase in poverty? Because there are a number of, between the age of 16 to 18, who are gainfully engaged at the workplace. The Labour Code makes provision for employment under age 18. Once you're under 18, you're not expected to be gainfully employed, outside of if it is family training, etc., between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. The Labour Code is clear on this. As a matter of fact, the ILO Convention, I think is 143 or thereabouts, I stand corrected, that came out of in 1973, because the aspect of compulsory school age was designed to address the aspect of child labor. Do we have a major issue with this at the moment that we are seeking to address? And if that is the case, that has not been advanced. Keeping people in school compulsory as a matter of urgency, as though there's a crisis, as of September, could it have more negative impact than positive impact? And what it may also do, if we say that we are passing a law for the sake of fulfilling some campaign promise, yes, and for the potential beneficiaries, they cannot make use of it because the infrastructure is not there. So that come next year, come December, someone in Form 5 that is 16 and was expected to leave next year or so, and they can't leave, but they go to school and there is nothing to be done. There is nothing new to be done. What are we saying? What are we sending? And this is the nature of the discussion I want at this place. Come with information, come with the data for us so that we can give our unqualified support. It also seeks to probably address the issue of unemployment, because, and that's why I'm asking for the numbers. A link was made with people sitting on the blocks, well, unemployed. But would that be truly addressing the issue of unemployment? Because if someone is not on the blocks, as they may be tempted to do, and they may rebel to do, but they are in a building or an environment in which they have nothing to do, nothing constructive to learn, because the resources are not there. Is this a true reflection of reducing unemployment? And especially, even with the economic impact, someone has to pay for this. Someone has to pay for this engagement. And whereas those students, because school age, who will now no longer be able to seek employment, because the point has been made that employers are not taking these school leavers because they are not ready for the world of work. Well, even if you bring it to 18 and you haven't prepared them for the world of work, that wouldn't change anything, you know. So for the next 4, 5 years or 6 years, that it may take us to put systems in place, what you are now doing is making it worse. You are now putting 18-year-olds or 18 plus in a work environment in which an employer will not take them according to the information from the Minister of Education. I find it difficult to accept that the increased applications that we are getting for work permits is impacted by the 16 to 18-year-old in any significant way. In other words, what work that is required, right, that focuses on the aspect of between 16 to 18, that they are not prepared for the world of work, right, so that they are sitting on the block when, for instance, we have to bring in foreign workers. The question that must be asked, are we saying that between the age of from 18 upwards, we don't have people sitting on the blocks? And therefore, there's a shortage only between 16 to 18? Because the question of preparation will still come into play. When you move to 18, the question, what it also speaks about, and probably that's what CXC probably may not recognize they are doing, there's a mismatch in our education system. There's a mismatch. There is a mismatch, and the private sector can tell you that. And that is where collaboration comes in. So we need to speak to our teachers, we need to speak to our private sector, we need to speak to the labor movement. I'm hearing of this for the first time. The TUC is hearing of this when I get this bill. We represent working class people that have their children who may have already have preparation or looking to look. Okay, as you turn 16, you finish your school because you do Form 5, you get your 4, 5, 6, 16 CXCs or whatever it is, that you'll now get some form of employment to help the household. And that's the reality. What I'm addressing here is not ideological, It's not aspirational. I'm addressing there's a reality outside it. I'm agreeing. So I'm not faulting the aspirations. I'm asking whether or not we took into consideration those realities, and it is research, data-driven, that will guide us. I was asked that question, what does it mean? Because there are people on the blocks, yes, in that age group, but there are people on the blocks 20, 25, 30. Right? Yes. So I'm asking for whatever assistance that can be given to us in terms of that data. And we can't stop it from passing. Let me make the point. The numbers is clear. Let's be frank about this. And I'm not here to say don't pass it. I'm here to say that I'm not saying it is good or bad. These are the concerns that we have. Anything that will increase the learning capacity of our people, give them additional tools. As a matter of fact, from our end, we have always encouraged our people and to give our children education. And that is why we fight every day on March the street to get a better wage for our members so that they can have some savings, they can have some income that can go towards education. Because many times they have to make that choice between putting food on the table and education. So we are not opposed to that. I don't think any one of us inside here could be opposed to that. I don't think any one of us on your side would be opposed to this. But I want us to reach a stage where especially in the early life of this administration, okay, that's what you advance, that we show that we are taking a different approach, data-driven, where we can come here and say we have done X or Y research, this is what we have come up with. And the numbers are driving these decisions. So my colleague, these are our immediate concern. These are some of our immediate concerns. Because we recognize that during unfavorable labor market conditions, young people tend to remain in education longer. Yes? These are, it's the OECD. So, these are there to help guide us. Higher employment rates reduce the opportunity cost of staying in school, allowing students to develop their skills for when the economy improves. So we have to put systems in place. It is not just a legislation, right? Because these things, if it is not properly done, or if the structures are not put in place, the youth will lose further confidence in us. Because when we sit here and we advance the reasons as to what we hope to achieve, but the structures are not there, it can lead to further concern. So, Madam President, through you, and understanding your background in education and broader societal issues, where your engagement internationally is data-driven, and given the importance of education that you yourself have demonstrated, Dr. Williams, it is earned, it was not given. It was not, yes, and we encourage our people to keep developing themselves. Even in work, we encourage our people to continue upgrading themselves. That is why most of our collective agreements, sometimes my colleague here in the private sector, I can tell you, many employers don't agree, but we try to get education assistance, even to be bonded, even in the private sector, so people can go to the extension classes. The importance of education, recognizing our culture, where many times we had to go to find work early to help take care. Right? Because even if our parents worked for 30-something years straight, the biggest salary that they got wasn't enough. Yes? Wasn't enough to improve our standard of living. So the investment went into our schooling. And that is why probably agriculture has been impacted so, because we use the agricultural resources to give education without it being directed to come back to assist in developing our local economy. So, Madam President, I end by making the point that we are not opposed to further learnings, but we are not sure, because we do not have the information, and we have not seen the information from the other side, that this, from September, will address in a real way the ideas and issues raised by the presenter of the bill on the government side. Thank you very much, Madam President.
I thank you, Senator Lewis, for your input. Senator Cox.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Madam President, for some time I thought that Senator Lewis was reading off of my notes. Because let me just start by saying I think it is clear that if not everyone here, and a greater part of our nation understands the importance of education and the role that it plays in eliminating poverty and giving people an opportunity. And I see it from the context, from my own personal experience, my own upbringing and background as well. My dad left school at 15 and had to go and work to support the entire family, and so much of us could speak to experiences like that. So we understand the importance of education, and that is clear. However, I think the presenter of the bill really failed to give a clear indication as to what is really driving this age increase, and a lot of discussions were centered around prospective programs, initiatives to address the skills and things like that, which is very important and which is lacking and has been lacking for some time, which we agree. However, I ask this question: if we were not to move this bill today, would that in any way prevent those programs from going forward and having the effect that they desire to have? I think not. So I still trying to find out what is the true justification for this increase, because whether or not, if we do not increase this age, how is it going to affect the implementation of those programs? And those programs, as we can and investigate, other countries have successful programs running. And so I don't see the correlation. And I also have a very important question. I'm not certain, and maybe our legal team here can help give some background on that. So I know that based on our laws, I think the age for consent is 16. So by changing this, is that affecting the age for consent as well? I don't know. So maybe that is something. Well, I'm just making sure, because we have the public listening as well, and a lot of it can be misunderstood. So I just want to raise that. But I beg, Madam President, that we do get a little more clarity on why the increase and in the school age. And I don't see whatever programs that are currently being implemented is only there to complement and to help support the youths between that age, between the 16 and 18 period. So I don't know. I'm still lost and a bit puzzled. I just don't see the correlation. And I think there is a clear opportunity for more explanation as to what is the true reason. I don't want to say it is a campaign promise, but I don't think that the minister would. No, I didn't say that it was said, but I didn't think that would be just the motivation for doing so. And when of course it has other implications. It is not as simple. There are a lot of complex things in terms of sealing off the age, moving the age from 16 to 18 compulsory for somebody to be in a school setting. So I just see that to say that it's the correlation I don't see, and I think that as my colleague senator indicated, that is something that probably we need to get more feedback on. But what was presented, I don't see, if we do not pass this bill today, I don't see that preventing all those initiatives from going forward and bearing the outcomes that we desire from them. I don't see that having that, because as it stands right now, when somebody finishes secondary school, they are driven by tertiary education. Moving the age to 18, does that mean that the government is going to allocate more monies for scholarship? I don't know. Does it speak to that? And so the question is, can we allocate more money for scholarship now without changing the age? So it's something, that is why I don't see the correlation. Hence the reason why I am raising that. And so I just beg for probably some more information. Probably you may have more information on that. More information on that particular matter, as your colleague minister had seemed to don't have an invitation. So let's see how we can move forward. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Cox. I think the presenters of the bill will listen to the other debates and then respond to you. I pass the floor then to Senator Rahman. Our Let me go back to the other side. Is it Senator Lacrette or Senator Thomas? Looks like Lacrette. You have the floor, Senator Lacrette. Is it Willie Thomas? Oh, I can't see at that angle. All right. Senator Gloria Thomas, with pleasure I offer you the floor, madam.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to support the Education Amendment Bill 2024. Madam President, this amendment will provide greater opportunities for our young people to gain more skills and formal education to better position themselves in the world of work and to improve their life chances. As Social Development Minister, I am interested in seeing the reliance on safety net reduced. One approach is to assist with this is to equip our young people to better take charge of their lives. This amendment is a progressive one, which I think will reduce the dependency of our young people. Principals of many of our secondary schools will tell you that over 50% of the students who wrote CXC and did not do as well as they was expecting return and request a second. So this amendment will automatically give these young people the chance for that second year that they have to go and beg for and principals refusing. And this will position them in a much better way. Parents and students will now have to reorient themselves to the new approach and the greater opportunity to embrace for further learning. So, Madam President, as I say, I stand to support the amendment because we notice many of our young people on the block, some in their 20s, some in their 30s, but it all started at age 16. So we have to move steadily to address that. And at that stage, it becomes a way of life for them. Because once they start to hang out on the blocks, to pull them out from there is a real task. So this amendment is trying to reduce all those incidents of people on the blocks losing their sense of direction, being not motivated to go back to school and to embrace higher education. And so, Madam President, they refuse or they lose their chance of improving themselves. With this age increase, it will ensure that our young people will be given the opportunity to benefit from additional learning in a structured way. And with these few points, Madam President, I pledge my support to the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Thomas. Senator Rahman.
Thank you, Madam President. So a lot has been said on both sides, and in particular in terms of further consultation prior to bringing this to Parliament, it would have been preferred so that we would be more clear. However, I think all of us in here support better education, and if an additional, well, I see it, I've heard they say up to 18, so currently it's up to 17 as the minister, well, no, it says 16, but if the language is being changed from 16 to 17, and currently inclusive, which means 16 means up to 17, and 17 would mean up to 18. So really it is only 1 year, not 2, legally. All right, let's get that clear. All right, can't be both. So you can have one interpretation for 18 and for one part and another interpretation for the other part. It's 1 year, according to what has been explained by the minister. Even 1 year is good. Generally, when students reach a certain age, the government will have to look into issues of discipline, because when students reach a certain age, they're ready to leave. Discipline could be a negative resulting from this. But I support having students learn and improve as much as possible before they enter the workforce, because the reality is, once they enter the workforce and other things come into play, other areas of responsibility, it's very difficult for them to go back. Very, very difficult. Continuing education is a challenge. And I note that the wording says compulsory school age. We know that school has different phases. So we have our primary, we have our kindergarten, primary, secondary, so different phases. So I assume by this compulsory school age, many of my colleagues here spoke about secondary school, but I am looking at it that it does not limit to secondary school. It just means you're compelled to receive schooling up until that age. It means we have, and the minister mentioned, TAMCC and ULO. If it were just referring to secondary school, there would be no need for him to mention TAMCC and ULO. So just clarifying some of the things, and perhaps the senator, the minister can clarify if my understanding is correct or wrong. So two clarifications so far. One, the age is 1 year based on the legal language. And two, that when we are saying that it is mandatory up to now 17 plus or up to 18, that it means all types of schooling, but you must stay in some sort of schooling system up until that age. If that is the case, then this is wonderful news, because as was said by my colleague for Labour, the business community does and needs more qualified or better qualified people to enter the workforce. And some of these things that we heard this morning that CXC was going to take away, these are some of the things that we need. So perhaps the students can come back, and if they get their agricultural science 1, then perhaps they can do the second in that extra year. I think it is important, but I also believe, so I understand the reason for it and I support it, but I believe that more should have been done to clarify some of the things so that we would not have so many questions here today. I thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rahman. Senator Adrian Thomas, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I've been very quietly. But Madam President, I have to stand to support the Education Amendment Bill as presented by my good friend and my good colleague, Senator the Honorable Andrew. Madam President, I would not regurgitate what was said by my colleagues in their presentations, but I think I want to raise some very important issues. But before I start, I want to commend Senator Salim Rahman for his presentation, because I think he really and truly expounded in a way which indicates that he took some time off to really interpret the bill. And I think I must commend you for having the right interpretation. It seems as though you have been reading our minds also. Madam President, the real issue, the real objective of this bill is to improve the education system in our country. We also are quite cognizant of the fact that our people, our young people in particular, are leaving secondary schools, 11, 12, 15 O-levels. Our employers are complaining that they are not delivering as they should. We are cognizant of that. We are also cognizant of the fact, and the reality is, that in this country, people do not. How many people leave secondary school before 16 years? Or remain in secondary school, sorry, after 16 years? Very few. But you know what it is? If as a society, we are advocating that secondary school is the end of the game, we are investing heavily in poverty. We are investing heavily in poverty. I started to work after secondary school. My mother died. My father was not in a position to take care of me in the way that he should. I left my grandparents' home because they did enough, and I was renting on my own. Madam President, I took the bold decision to abandon the job because $400, $500 would not have carried me where I am today. Many people, when they start off in work, a lot of people are excited. I want to finish school, I want to go to work. But they will soon realize that when they start to have responsibilities, have to pay their own rent, they want a car, they start to make children, they will realize that the job they have cannot sustain them. Cannot sustain them. And therefore, it is important that we improve our education at the preliminary stage of our development. Preliminary, the foundation. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves and our society dabbling in poverty. And if we believe that extending it, encouraging our people to extend it, going to come with a cost because we have to get more infrastructure. If we believe that this is expensive, let us continue to try ignorance. Madam President, our education system, sad to say, is still based on academics. Still based on academics. And therefore the skills that our society demands today are in the Ministry of Tourism. Tourism, we boast about being one of the main pillars of our economy. But yet for all the employers in the hotel industry, they need people with the necessary training so that we will stop importing labor into Grenada. Our secondary schools have to be reviewed and designed to accommodate what our society is demanding. So our task is great. This is a starting point. This is a starting point. And therefore, there are so many areas in tourism that we can invest in terms of equipping our people. In the yachting industry, there's a big avenue there, great opportunities. The creative economy calls for a lot of training, and therefore we are encouraging people that if you are young, use that time to go to school. The world of work will be more receptive to you when you are more equipped. And Madam President, we must appreciate the fact that education must become part of our culture if we want to advance our society. If only we had the vision, like men like Burroughs in Barbados, Bonham in Guyana, Eric Williams in Trinidad. I remember these guys in the 50s and 60s advocating free education up to university. They understood it. They understood what it means to educate, to have an educated society.
There are countries in this world that may not have much mineral resources and natural resources, but if they have an educated people, the progress they will make in life is amazing. And I'm not talking about education with pen and paper. I'm not talking about academics. Madam President, education is broader than that. If we are such expert for oil in Grenada, the time will come when we will need to review our education system and equip our people to process, to explore and exploit oil. And education does not end. Education does not end at 16 and 18 at secondary school. Education is continuous. It's a life-standing thing. The medical doctor will tell you, if they don't refresh themselves, they cannot practice. The lawyers will tell you, if they don't refresh themselves, they might be kicked out of the bar. So let us don't play naive, Madam President, in regards to what is happening in Grenada, in regards to education, and what is needed for our society to develop and move forward. Because if we don't make the investment today in education, serious education, we will make serious investment in building the police force, more prisons, more pink houses. We want to avoid that. So I stand here today in support of this very important bill. And I ask my colleagues on the other side to do likewise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Adrian Thomas. Senator Sinclair.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise to make my contribution to this bill before us, proposed bill, Education Amendment Bill 2024. Madam President, I'm so confused. I nearly went to sleep a while ago there. Seriously. I ask myself, and I think this is a question to all of us, the hypothesis before us is one more year of schooling, as the word is, I don't go into secondary, of schooling, whatever this school is, eliminate, reduce, minimize the issues that was raised that we want to curb. For example, people on the blocks, idle, crimes, issue of without work ethics, without skills. These are the main things that were presented. And of course, the benefits downstream of if you have an education. Would one more year change it? And the question would be, if one more year will change this and make it better, what are the things that we plan to do in this last year that will be so different that would make us get a positive result? And then the next question I would ask, this thing that we want to do are things we want to do in this 1 year. Could they have been done earlier? And could they have been done over a longer period of time, such that you can able to take it in more? And the more you take in earlier, the result of those things is innovation and excellence. So by the time you reach 16, you see you have your first degree already. And we have read many cases throughout the world where that is possible. So this thing about one more year to solve those things, Madam President, as a scientist who deal with hypotheses and so on, that need to be tested. I rest that on the side as introductory. Madam President, I listen to my dear friend, Senator from Education, speak about as my father would say, a moral of the story of a broken pipe and so on. And I smile and I wonder, well, if you have a pipe broken and it's flooding the place, fixing the pipe is not the solution, you know. Now, what's a fixing pipe every day? And pipes flooding all the time. So what do you see they're doing sometimes? They have to replace. Right now they are digging up the whole road from Maribo right through Gramba. They're changing pipes with new pipes, different technology, such that, in fact, in some places they realize the water is not even running yet because they have to go and test it and make sure that those pipes are connected and fitted properly. I say this to say, Madam President, that the pipe we want to fix, is it tested? Would it be tested in sufficient time, as Senator Luis said, by September? It's functioning. Where is the design experiment to show that that hypothesis I spoke of going to yield the results that we're looking for? My dear friend, Senator Andrew, the Minister for Education, I ponder, Madam President, because right now, the other question is to us, are there many students that are not 16 years that are not in school? And why are they not in school? I haven't heard the issue of truancy, the issue of making sure that students 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, 11 years are in school. Is it because some of them have issues and other things that we miss those early opportunities of redemption, such that by 16 they're really gone? Since 14, Form 4, they want to leave school. So we could bring it to 16 and 17 and 18. But would there be students there for that? So the question is, Madam President, is it the issue of fixing the pipe? Or is it the issue of looking at the design of what we have? I go further. And it's interesting that the gun amnesty thing came up today. I'm wondering, Madam President, this is a bill, This is a law. So someone out on the blocks right now, coming September, they might have left school last year, and they will be 18, 16, 17 maybe. What will the law do to these people? The 17-year-old on the block right now, the 16-year-old on the block right now, how do we treat that? Do we bring them back in school?
Yes.
Would their parents, as the Education Act Section 48 speaks, they will be charged about $1,000, the parents, for not having the children in school. This is the penalty, for not having the children in school. And if this is so significant, Madam President, and it's such a big deal, why aren't we also looking at the penalties for the parents in this matter, and increasing the penalties for those who may not have the children in school? So the issue that Senator Luis raised about wideness, consultation, and so on is part of the issues that we continue to be plagued with, Madam President, with these bills of significant impact being rushed through all stages and basically denying the consultation process. But it's not surprising. If CXC, they can't come doing their own thing like that, then we should be able to give a better example. Madam President, the issue about skills, I'm wondering. You see, in Grenada, we had many skills being taught in schools. I've been teaching a while now. I've been in school a while now, in local. Many skills. The people like the Trisha Grant and them will tell you that they would have learned the textile and so on in school, and they have the big design firm. She been around a long time. So this thing about skills in school is not nothing new. So the question I ask again, Madam President, where is the research and the benchmarking and the observation of things that work, rather than hastily go into 16, 17, and feel we're doing something transformational? Doing something transformational doesn't mean that you have to be different. It doesn't have to be different. So, I used to be teaching integrated science Form 1s. But we used to be in the lab, touching beakers and test tube and Bunsen burners under supervision. They were learning skills to be scientists at 10 and 11 years. We don't have to take them at 16 years and try to make them a scientist. So the whole issue, Madam President, my dear Minister, need to go back and look at the whole issue of pedagogy and those sort of strategies in the school. What are the teachers saying? And I'm not dealing even with the issue of time and resources that my dear friend Senator Lacrette spoke about right now. They're so busy with sports and all of those things, they don't even have time to coordinate things. So where are the teachers? I don't even want to go in there. Where are the schools? Do we have enough space? When we keep 2,000, when a class like SAS, for example, say no more 150 students in 1 year, you are saying you need to keep them. And you have to keep them another cycle. We're speaking about easily. So where would you put them? If they want to stay, you go throw them out. We can remember, Madam President, if the student want to stay, I finish Form 5, I finish do CXC, and I want to come back to school, you tell me I can't stay in the school? Where does the law say I cannot stay? I want to be in school, there's no other place. So I'm coming back to my school.
Madam President.
Point of information. Thank you for yielding. Senator,
Yes.
you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'm compelled to rise here, despite the fact that I'm not concluding, because this is a woeful misrepresentation of what the bill seeks to do. The current Education Act allows for persons to stay in school up till 21. And so nobody stays and says, well, I want to stay. If they want to stay, they're allowed. But there's a natural progression in the education system that allows them to complete by a certain time. And we're not changing that. We're not interfering with that. We are just simply legislating that you have an obligation to spend this additional period getting some form of education, some form of schooling, which the Senator for Business has correctly articulated. Whether it be you have to repeat, yes, and that happens in a normal setting, or if you have to go to TAMCC, which is a natural progression for many, or NULO, or one of the other skill centers or skill facilities that will be approved coming in preparation for that.
Or private schools.
Or private facility, or university even. St. George's University, some have done that.
Exactly.
Which is excellent response, Madam President. So the question further arises.
Senator
For these 2,000 persons,
Sinclair continues.
yeah, for these 2,000 students,
Please.
for these 2,000 students, have we done an assessment to figure out if these potential areas that we are speaking about has, one, the capacity to absorb them?
Yes.
So do we know out of 2,000, if 500 want to go to NULO? Because remember, we can't control the choice of skill that they want to do. These are the things we have to look at. These are the things we have to look at, Madam President. Do we have that map? We may have an idea that we have 200 spaces, but do we know what is the interest areas of one? So that is one factor. I think, Madam President, the issue of scholarships, the issue of moving to other advanced education, this is where we have to be going. I will tell you something, Madam President. This issue about skills, we have to be careful, you know. Be very careful. A guy could lay blocks very well. Very good, he could put down blocks. That is a skill. But skills goes, Madam President, with theory. That is why when you go for a driving test, you do a practical and then you do a theory and then you do a practical. You must understand the theory properly so that you know and understand the principles of what you are doing with that skill. So I don't want us to lose sight of that. The second thing, Madam President, this issue about skills gap, that's a misnomer. Because, and I will tell you why, Madam President, this Tam Sisi, which was highly skilled with technical and vocational institute, existed many years ago, and part of then it was joined because Tam Sisi was a skill part, was a theoretical part. I went to the Tam Sisi IFE component, but it was the technical and vocational institute component where they would have done the technical skills in all different, whether it's secretarial, mechanic, etc. Now the both of them combined, and yet still, in our little Grenada, you still have the program segregated. So a student cannot be doing some arts here and still have the opportunity to do that in the same program. You have to finish that stream and then come back and do that other. So we ourselves are limiting those opportunities by the way we think and the way that we process things. So when Senator Ram wants somebody who might be able to know to fix mechanical things, the guy might have studied physics, but he doesn't understand the mechanical things. So what he may have to go back to Tam Sisi to understand the mechanical things. So what I'm saying, Madam President, is that the Ministry of Education need to look at these strategies, because changing the age by 1 year additional is not going to solve this problem. It's not. It's let us look at another situation. We speak about the issue about free schooling and so on. I went to IFE when it was free. They had in fact there were less buses. You had to hop ride and hike a ride to go to school. Or you find a place to stay within town for a little while during those times. Now you have much more transportation. You have the free program by the government and all of those things. But ask, my dear Minister, Madam President, how ready our students when they have finished that secondary component ready to go to the next stage? How ready? And then the other thing that we need to look at is where does online schooling comes into that? And how do you monitor online schooling? Because there are other persons right now in Grenada, they go to classes 4 o'clock in the evening online in all parts of the world. But they could be in the blocks on the beach during the day, relaxing. It doesn't mean that they are not in school. So how do you intend to monitor and keep a record of that matter? So all of these things, Madam President, and there might be much more that could be raised in this debate, I think is not clear. And yes, that goal of this 16 extra year might be a trigger, but I don't think that 1 more year will change the goal that needs to be solved. I don't see that. There's much more things that need to be done that the Ministry of Education has not done. Because you need more teachers. And you know what they will tell us? You don't qualify teachers. So we have to import teachers. That's why it will be. Or they will say, well, you know the program can't start, because we don't have teachers. Good excuse. Madam President, this thing has far-reaching effect. And I don't think that the proposal before us can prove the hypothesis of 1 year would help to reduce persons on the block, increase participation in skills, and also increase the opportunities for persons to be in school. And that increased opportunity to be in school, Madam President, as the minister said clearly, you could be in school up to 21. So then what is the mischief that is 1 year is to solve? I'm still confused. I wait for his rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Roderick Sinclair. Senator David Andrew.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to summarize and to bring closure to this bill presentation. Let me express sincerest thanks to all of my colleagues, both on this side and on the other side, for your valuable input into these debates. So many things were said, I probably cannot and will not attempt to rebut or give an explanation for all of them. But allow me to say, Madam President, that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And we see this legislation as one step in a series of many to reform a system that needs the whole set of piping replaced. Further, Senator Sinclair talked about not just fixing the broken pipe, but changing the piping. And I think in many ways this is in fact changing the piping, setting the legislation. I want to put in place as well that we are not asking teachers to do anything different. So I hear all the talk about consulting with teachers. We are not asking teachers to go out of what is regularly required. We are simply putting the onus on the parents of students to now ensure that the students stay in school for an additional period. And all the obligations and legal responsibilities that obtained while they were supposed to stay there till 16 inclusive, it now falls on them to 17 inclusive. And we are clear that that gives us, as a legislating body, the opportunity by law to further input educational opportunity and access to them. And we know that there are things that we have to put in place, and we are confident that we are on the right road. I want to point out too, Madam President, that there is a difference between legislating and legislation on operationalizing things. While we can pass the legislation, it is the reason why we have in various ministries technocrats. My senator colleague on the other side, Madam President, always talks about Priya Lasni. And we could spend a lot of time getting technical about how many officers you're going to put on the west side, and what if a man has a piece of land close to the sea. And we can talk about all sorts of stuff in regards to the implementation of programs relating to Priya Lasni. But I don't think this is what this place is exactly for. Because once we put the legislative framework in place, we anticipate that under his auspices and with the officers concerned, they will work to see the objectives set out achieved. So sometimes I think we belabor lots of little things that we should leave for the technocrats to flesh out, in keeping with the legislative framework that we are responsible for putting in place. Yeah. Madam President, I want to just point out to us that where Grenada is heading is a desirable place. We are moving in a direction we want to see our education system move towards first world status, towards the advanced societies. Societies like Germany and the Netherlands, and some of those advanced and first world societies have gone in those directions. They will tell you that the successes of their economies and their countries reside around the education system being responsive to the work-related needs. And so, I want to say to you, in Germany, the mandatory school age is 18. the upper limit. So to the Netherlands. In England, you can leave school at on the last Friday in June of the year in which you turn 16, but you must continue, you must do one of the following until you are 18. Stay in full-time education, example a college, or start an apprenticeship or training program. In other words, it's the same concept here. We can go on, and we can talk about Australia. You can legally leave school at the end of the year in which you reach 17 years and 6 months. We can go on, right? Or when you reach 18. The Bahamas, it's 18, 5 to 18. So we're in good company. And this legislation is pointing us in a good direction, in a positive direction. And so while I take all of the comments raised by colleagues on both sides of the House, I feel very confident, Madam President, to continue in commending this bill to this Honourable House and to the people of Grenada, Carriacou and Petite Martinique for their acceptance, knowing full well that while it will not fix all of the challenges, it gives us as an administration, as a people, as a government, the opportunity for a prolonged period of time to invest more time, energy, resources, and training into our young people. This we want to continue to have an opportunity to do and to be supported by a legal framework to so do. Thank you very much, Madam President.
I thank the proponent of the bill, Senator David Andrews, Minister of Education. Honourable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. All those who are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary opinion say no. All those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Education Amendment Bill 2024.
Madam President, I beg to move that the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause in accordance with the Standing Order number 62.
Honourable members, the question is that this Honourable House resolves itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause. All those who are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. I think the ayes have it. We are now in committee. Now, soon. Thank you.
Clause 2, amendment of Section 2 of the Principal Act.
He's not here. Honourable members, the question is that Clause 2 forms part of the Principal Act of 2024. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it.
Clause 1, short title and commencement.
Honourable members, the question is that Clause 1 forms part of the Principal Act. All those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. The ayes have it.
Madam President, or Madam Chair, I beg to move that the Senate resumes and the Chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill.
Honorable members, the question is that the Senate resumes and the chair of this committee reports progress on the bill. All those who are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it. We have resumed the Senate. I have to report that the bill was considered by a committee of the whole Senate and passed without amendment.
Madam President, I beg to move that the chairman's report be adopted by this Honorable House.
The question is, honorable members, that the chairman's report be adopted. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. Minister Andrew.
Madam President, I rise to beg the third reading of the bill.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time. The question is that the bill be read a third time and passed. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Of the contrary say nay. The ayes have it. The bill is passed.
The bill for an act shortly entitled Education Amendment Bill 2024.
Thank you. Honorable members, it is now well past the noon hour. 5 bills to go. I propose we break for lunch and resume within the hour. So it's probably now 20 minutes to the first hour after noon, and we will resume at 30 minutes after the same hour, 1:30. Thank you. Senate is suspended.